This day in sports history. Hey, and welcome back to This Day in Sports History. It's September 30th, and on this day throughout the years, we had a wild final quarter in the NFL. The Euros turned the tables on the U.S. in the Ryder Cup, and the longest winning streak in MLB history came to an end. That, plus a rising NASCAR star, was killed in an off-track accident, and a non-sports did you know about the longest mountain range on planet Earth. But let's start with what happened on this day back in 2007, when the Detroit Lions put together a final quarter for the ages. This was the 2-1 Lions hosting the 1-2 Chicago Bears in a Week 4 matchup. Both of these teams had been on the losing end of lopsided games the week before, and they were both in need of a rebound game. This had been a nap-inducing yawn fest through 3 quarters, with the Bears leading 13-3, though. So there were not many indications about what was on the way in the final quarter of play. Lions QB John Kitna got the scoring started right as the quarter began, throwing a 4-yard touchdown pass to Sean McDonald. That was followed by a Lions pick 6 on the next Bears possession to take a 17-13 lead. Devin Hester then took the ensuing kickoff back 97 yards for the score, and the Bears regained the lead 20-17. 3 yards and a cloud of dust had turned into a drag race on the Bonneville Salt Flats. Kitna led back-to-back Lions scoring drives, putting 14 more points on the board. The Bears had turned the offensive reins over to Brian Griese after Rex Grossman struggled against the Cowboys in Week 3. He didn't have his best day, throwing 3 picks on this afternoon, but he did drive the Bears down the field and throw a TD pass with 52 seconds remaining to make it a 3-point game. The Bears had no choice but to onside kick it, and not only did the Lions recover, they did this.
So here we go, Robbie Gould. And the kick picked up by Fitzsimmons. Fitzsimmons down the sideline. Casey Fitzsimmons into the end zone for the clinching touchdown.
The Lions won the game 37-27. It was the 3rd time in Lions history they had returned a kick and an interception back for touchdowns in the same game. The 34 points the Lions scored are the most put on the board in the 4th quarter in NFL history. The NFL record for points in any quarter is 41. The Packers did that in 45, and the Rams equaled it 5 years later. The combined 48 points scored by the Bears and Lions in the 4th quarter in this one is the highest in NFL history. Hey, real quick, you've heard me talk a lot about the Sterling Soap Company over the past few months, and if you haven't tried out their soaps, I get it. It's not easy changing up your routine. But let me just say, if you give them a try, I'm nearly 100% certain you will have 0 regrets. They carry not only bar soap, but shave soap, liquid body soap, body lotions, beard balm, lip balm, and a lot more. Plus, there are myriad scents to choose from. Their products are made with natural ingredients and scented oils, and they are committed to being environmentally conscious. And I always get a handwritten note on my packing slip, so I know it's been checked before shipping, and it's a nice little human touch in a world that seems to be going away from that. Give Sterling Soap a try today at sterlingsoap.com. Well, the Ryder Cup wrapped up on Sunday with the incredible U.S. comeback coming up just a little bit short. If they had managed to erase the 7-point deficit on the final day, it would have blown the previous best out of the water. Now, one of those incredible comebacks happened on this day back in 2012 when the Europeans returned the favor on the U.S. Back on the 26th, I talked about the greatest comeback in Ryder Cup history when the U.S. battled back from a 4-point deficit on the final day in 1999. Well, here we are 13 years later, and it was the Europeans who entered the final day 4 points in the hole. And just like the Americans did in '99, the Euros got off to a great start, winning the first 4 matches to square it, and then 3 of the next 6. One of those first 4 matches was Ireland's Rory McIlroy versus Keegan Bradley. Rory got a little mixed up with his starting time, and he showed up only 10 minutes before he was scheduled to tee off. Without any time on the range and barely swinging the club, he went out and beat Bradley 2-1. When Martin Kymar rolled in a 6-foot par putt on 18 to beat Steve Stricker, the Euros got to the magic 14-point plateau to retain the cup. When Tiger and Francesco Molinari halved the final match of the day, it was the Euros winning 14.5 to 13.5. The win was an emotional one for the Europeans, not just because of the huge come-from-behind win, but also due to the fact that this was the first Ryder Cup played after the passing of Seve Ballesteros, who had been a key Ryder Cup player and coach during his career, and he had been an inspiration in his battle with cancer. After the win, European captain Jose Maria Olazabal said, "Seve will always be present with this team. He was a big factor for the event for the European side." On this day in 1990, a NASCAR star in the making died in an accident, but it wasn't on the racetrack. Rob Moroso was the reigning Grand National Series champion, and that's the level just below the Cup Series. Prior to the start of the 1990 NASCAR season, he'd been offered the seat in a Cup car owned by his dad, former drag racing champion Dick Moroso. Through 25 races, he qualified for every race, and he had one top 10 finish, and he was the top rookie driver in the points. Well, Rob Moroso raced his number 20 Crown Gas Oldsmobile to a 21st place finish at the Holly Farms 400 at Wilkesboro on this day, and he, like a lot of other drivers and crew members, lived about an hour south of Wilkesboro in Mooresville. So after the race, he and his girlfriend Debbie headed south for home. Traveling west on Highway 150, Moroso overcooked a corner and he lost control. He tried to correct it, but he was going too fast and his reaction time had been dulled by alcohol. A car coming in the other direction struck the driver's side door. Moroso died at the scene of the accident, along with the driver of the other car, 27-year-old Tammy Williams. Moroso's girlfriend survived. Moroso's blood alcohol level was well above the legal limit at 0.22. Moroso was one of the up-and-comers in the sport, and he actually won the Rookie of the Year award posthumously, despite not competing in the final 4 races of the season. On this day in 1916, it was the end to the longest winning streak in Major League Baseball history. Now, you might think that the longest winning streak in baseball history would come from a powerhouse team like the 1927 Yankees, a team that dominated throughout and turned a couple of games lead in the standings into a double-digit one. And you would be incorrect. Instead, it was another New York team, the 1916 Giants, and they started their amazing streak on September 7th when they were dead last in the National League, 14 games back in the standings. They reeled off a string of 26 wins with the only interruption a 1-1 tie on the 18th. They swept the Phillies, the Reds, the Pirates, the Cubs, and the Cardinals during their streak. On this day, they were playing a doubleheader with the Boston Braves, and they won the opener 4-0 to get to number 26. In the second game of the day, the game was tied 2-2 after 6, but Boston exploded for 5 in the top half, and they hung on for the 8-3 win to snap the streak. The old mark had been 21 games, set back in 1880 by the Chicago Cubs. The 26-game winning streak is still the Major League Baseball record, and yet, surprisingly, did not put them at the top of the standings. Instead, when the streak ended, they were still 7 games back, and they finished the season in 4th place. The closest any team has come to equaling or bettering the 26-game winning streak are the 2017 Cleveland Indians, who won 22 straight that season. On this day in 1945, it was Hank Greenberg providing the firepower for Detroit. Of course, Greenberg played baseball for the Detroit Tigers, and this was the final day of the 45 season. The Tigers and the St. Louis Browns were set to play a doubleheader. Well, Greenberg's Tigers were in a tight pennant chase with Washington. Detroit was in the driver's seat with a 1-game lead, but if the Browns could steal 2 from Detroit on this day, then it would force a 1-game playoff. The Browns had a 3-2 lead in the top of the 9th, but the Tigers loaded the bases with 1 out, and into the box strode Greenberg, a man who had ended his 4-year military service just 3 months earlier. He sent a Nels Potter pitch deep into the seats down the left field line, just inside the foul pole for the dramatic grand slam home run to give Detroit the 6-3 lead. St. Louis could not scratch for any in the bottom half, And since the Tigers now had a 1.5-game lead over Washington, there was no need to play the second game of the doubleheader, and so they canceled it. The Tigers went on to beat the Chicago Cubs in the World Series in 7 games. And on this day in 1972, Roberto Clemente picked up his 3,000th hit. It would be his last hit of the season and, unfortunately, also the last hit of his career. The 37-year-old Clemente finished the season with a .312 batting average. He was a 12-time All-Star, and he won 12 consecutive Gold Gloves for his dazzling work in right field. He died 3 months later on a charitable mission to Nicaragua. The plane carrying supplies he'd purchased went down in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Puerto Rico, killing Clemente and all aboard. And time now for today's non-sports Did You Know? The world's longest mountain chain is mostly under the ocean. The mid-ocean ridge is almost entirely beneath the sea, stretching across a distance of more than 40,000 miles. It's said that this mountain chain is less explored than the surface of Venus or Mars. That's all I've got for you today. This and every episode of This Day in Sports History is researched, written, voiced, and produced by me, Steve White. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow for another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.